everyone. I'm Shelley Lyle.
And I'm Jessica Francis.
And welcome to Voices from the Field, a podcast brought to you by the Department of Sport Management at the University of Florida. This podcast was created to share the career journeys of sport industry professionals. Our hope is that you learn the ins and outs of different sport industry professions. We're excited to be with all of you this week and with our special guest, Kevin Carr, the founder, CEO, and principal of Pro to CEO, an innovative transition and business development firm.
Kevin received his bachelor's and master's degree from Florida State University. He started as an athletic academic coordinator for FSU, then moved into corporate services manager and director of training and development for Inroads. Kevin was the associate director of SAS and director of life skills for Michigan State, the NBA's development league director of community relations, then Senior Director of Player Development, and the NBA's Senior VP of Social Responsibility and Player Programs before founding Pro to CEO in August of 2014. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. I am so delighted to be here. I'm ready to get into this and share the journey so we can help some people grow, right?
Love that.
Yeah, we're super excited to hear all the amazing positions you've had and kind of how you landed where you're at and a little bit more about that. But let's start with your career journey and in college. Curious when you really found the passion or knew you wanted to get into athletics and why.
Yeah, the obvious isn't always so obvious, but when you're looking for your career, I'll never forget the advice of my best coach, one of my best coach, which is my mom. She would say, try to find a career instead of a bill-paying job. And when you do that, you will eventually find passion. And if the money isn't exactly right from the start, your passion and your drive will grow your career and grow your income. So I wanted to be in sport really to sort of avenge what had happened with my older brother. He was an elite athlete, had scholarships. Everybody came to our house to recruit him, Big Ten, ACC, SEC. And when he went to college, he only lasted 2 years. And when he came back home, I was really, really down about it because we thought he was the way out. I grew up, very low income. We moved every year just about to see my mom struggle with making ends meet. So him going to college was a big deal. And when he came back, it was like, wow, he didn't make it. We're not going to get out of here. And it really fueled me to get going. His journey isn't necessarily mine, but I saw the need then in my own family, developing yourself. So even if sports doesn't work out, you got to be ready for what's next. So I started literally advising kids through college as a RA over the summers. And then I got a lead from a coach who says, hey man, you're pretty good at this. I'm gonna tell the athletic department about you. And when I was finishing my master's degree, I met this gentleman. And this is where you gotta decide sometimes to put down the fun and figure out whether this could connect the dots to something. So my boss says, hey, you want to go to lunch? And I was like, hey, I'm working. I can't, And she's like, I can read between the lines. You want me to pay for your lunch? I was like, well, I am a starving graduate student. So she's like, okay, Chili's, I got you. Big Mouth Burger. Yeah, I know what you want. So I'm literally going to lunch for the lunch, but I realized there was an opportunity to meet this gentleman who was coming from Nebraska, and he was literally interviewing for this big time job at Florida State. So I'm finishing up my master's degree. I said, hey, maybe he's got jobs. Maybe there's something there. So I go in, put my best on, I'm eating. My boss leaves the meeting and she says to me, take over. You've been a student here. You know what to do. Get him back to campus. He says, if you were me, what would you do? So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to go and say what's on my mind. So I tell him, I said, look, I think athletes need to have better transitions into cultures that they're not really used to. I have a family member that came and he just didn't make it because he didn't know how to ask for help. He didn't understand the culture of learning, and that even if he got hurt as an athlete, he still had an identity. Like, you need to help guys like that. And he's like, whoa, okay, got you. So I get back to my office. My boss says to me, "What did you say to him? What did you say to him?" I was like, "What do you mean?" She says, "He asked me what my plans for you were after you graduate, because if you don't, I may want to hire him because he has passion." And for me, that's how I got in the door. Literally, I didn't know a thing about advising. I've been advising kids like kind of as an RA, and I was studying human resource management. At my time, there wasn't sports management programs, sort of officially. They were all under kinesiology, not so formal now. And I just willed myself into just speaking off the top of what I felt needed to be done. And he and I met. He said, "I can't give you a job, interview it, and maybe you'll win it." And I did. And that's how I got my start. Literally, the master's thesis semester, I started, and I'm still working on my master's, but they didn't want me to get away. So I started right there.
That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things I want to like ask follow-up questions on, but just given, our time and all the things,
Hmm.
yeah, it's amazing that, you kept an open mind and you were willing to be your authentic self, which I think can be tricky, especially for young students, right? That you
Hmm.
kind of take a chance on what you have to bring, and the nature of who you are to the table when you have, powerful coaches and other individuals. So that definitely stuck out to me. I'm like, wow, to be able to like share when this guy's going to probably get a few $1 million contracts, it sounds like, or a nice salary. But when it comes to Pro to CEO, so can you share a little bit about, you worked in the MBA, you worked in the college, which I think is really cool. So you've had that college experience, and now you're talking about and pro experience, and then you move into Pro to CEO. So can you share a little bit more about what you do in your current business, and then maybe your daily responsibilities, some things about that?
Sure. So my day-to-day business really is working at all levels, like, amateur, where I met with the top CEO of the amateur sports organizations just yesterday. Like literally just understanding what those needs are for their business and how we strategically can be consulting with them. But essentially, we try to provide a real strategic pathway for sports professionals who are coming in the leagues or going into college or going out. And it's literally the athletes themselves. So we have individual clients. We focus on coaching from a process standpoint. We draw up plays on which way you should go business wise, career wise. So it's very familiar to them. It's like working with us is like, you got to meet us in the gym, the business gym, the boardroom, however you want to look at it. So from a training and development standpoint, we work with colleges, universities, like I said, amateur sports to develop what it is that they need to professionalize or prepare their student athletes or their coaches or their staffs. And we've even evolved into corporate. So I have corporate clients that we do this even from places like Department of Revenue, which you would think, how do you do that? But principle centered business can have crossover. So when you get out there and your brand starts going, people start to share who you are and what you do. And often we can get a call from a industry we weren't even thinking about because it has crossover and sports is really appealing. We tend to connect the business. But overall, we're literally in the throes of me developing proposals. I think you got to be able to write. You've got to be able to put a plan of how you're going to get an organization or a team or individual computer there. And then they be able to see that from what you've been able to put together. So if you're not used to putting in the hours to build something and not understand that it could go and you could go win that deal, or you might pitch 10 times until you get the one, and then you've got a deal, and then hopefully they want to extend you beyond one time. Maybe it's you have a deal that is a retention, what they call a retainer contract, which you generally can go a year or 2 years or three, depending on how big of a job it is. But I love that I get to have such a diverse array of things. And I think that's where, education and you getting experience can be preparing you to be able to do that. So, but I love what I get to do. I get to do, I don't always got to do certain things, but I get to do it, which I love.
Yeah, that's great. And what when it comes to, and one thing we haven't really it being your own business, that means you're doing all of the aspects of a business, where in collegiate athletics or in professional, like you'll have a variety of people doing roles, but to have your own business and do this, yeah, that's I think something our students haven't had as much exposure to, because they think often of whether it's sport agency firms or it's collegiate athletics or professional athletics. So yeah, I think that's an awesome thing that you have insight for students in particular on. And then what are some things you really love about, like, I really appreciated that you said I get to do, I don't have to do, you've chosen a passionful career. So can you share a bit about what you've enjoyed and then maybe some challenging things to what you do?
I think the body of my work has allowed me to have diversity. So I can play in a lot of lanes, which I love. I'm someone that generally believes that I can offer solution. I'm not the solution for everything, but if I encounter it and we understand it as a company, we can create a strategy to help our client get there. So the diversity of being able to do different things is wonderful. I never get bored. I think the other piece is that as someone who's a student or a senior leader, the endless opportunity to create. I love the ability to create. I am an author, and from writing, I've been able to create my own IP. We've got 2 or 3 different properties in which we are able to say, "This is ours. This is our niche. We do this like nobody else, and this is why you should have us as a vendor for the solution that you need solved or the problem you need to overcome." So being able to create is a real value skill and ability that I love to be able to figure out what we can offer to the marketplace and then go for it and put it out there and then people buy it. And I've had products that since we started back in 2014, really hunkered down, figured out 2 lanes of business where we could create a product. And to this day, those products still serve us well as a company. So generally, you're put in a business and you take their stuff and you go and put it out there. When you're your own business, you have to have the confidence and the skill set. And if you can't do it, put together the right team to help you build it, and then you take it to the marketplace. I love that. And just the last thing is just the chance to, like we do at UF here, I get a chance to bring that into the classroom. I'm blessed to have years of experience now. I had someone say the other day 2 funny things to me. First, you've been at this so long that if there was a mountain for people who did this from the start, you'd be on the Mount Rushmore for player development. I was like, okay, so now I feel a little seasoned here. And then, the other day, someone called me, "You're one of the OGs of the industry." So I can appreciate it. I'm on the other side of seeing it not be fully developed, and to have, I guess this is another attribute, to have seen it fully evolve, where now there are PhDs in this, and now there are somebody at every NBA, NFL, NHL team who does this. There are people in the high school, all the way to retired players associations doing this type of work. It really does, give me a sense of pride and sense of accomplishment that I've been able to contribute in some small way to it. And that's why I love being able to give, in a sense, as a industry or professor practice here at UF.
That's
Awesome.
so great. You said so many nuggets in there that I really reminded me of the students that are in my classes. A lot of times they will write in their discussion boards about how they want to build that confidence. And you talked about kind of the evolution. And so I want to ask you, how have you evolved as a leader and an innovator and just someone in the industry over time?
I mean, the ability to believe more that I can achieve versus fearing it is the mindset piece that I think we have to have, or people should have. When I started out, like in a young position as like, hey, I'm advising track tennis and golf. I'll never get to football. I'll never get to the NBA. I didn't operate that. I never doubted my route, meaning that, okay, my boss said to me, "You get track, tennis, golf, cross country." I'm like, "Hey man, I'm from the projects here. I need football, I need basketball." And he's like, "No, no, no. grow where you're planted. And I think a lot of students turn down the opportunity to grow from something. So if someone offers you something in ticket sales or doing internet, some, it may not be the out front, but it is a start. And I think that's a confidence grower, because when I did that work and I did it well, someone said, hey, come join us over here. We're going to move you from here to there. And then I started to move up. My salary started to move up. And then I got offers to join other industries where I left sports for a little while because I thought I wanted to be a businessman. So literally at 29, I got a chance to start a franchise. And I'm like, okay, I just got sports, but I think I might want to try business. So I go to business. I'm miserable at it. I fail. I don't like it at all. I'm like, man, you're not as good as you thought. But that even grew me, because what it did is it set a crystal clear path. This is where I need to be. And I don't think you should be afraid to fail and try things. And then I knew I needed to get back. So then Michigan State, then the NBA comes calling. And I think things that allowed me to really succeed was to know that if I put in the work, and if I don't doubt myself, I believe more in the work, that I can get there, it will eventually evolve. So I know people might think that, hey, he's just talking motivation. No, truly. For me, it was process and the way I thought and the way I applied myself, and building a reputation that preceded me. I always got calls about jobs because people heard about my work before they met me. And I think that's a value as well. I think people want to get discovered right away. And a lot of times we forget about the work. You have to dominate the role that you're in. You dominate whatever they give you. And then you ask for opportunities or create opportunities, and you see and solve problems that other people don't see. And then people say, hey, that kid's got something. There's something there. I'm going to give them a try over here. So those are some of the things I like to think that can happen for other people, that happen for me to grow my confidence. I never thought being an advisor would get me to the NBA, but I never, ever did not think that the hard work would get me to the very top of whatever I tried to pursue. And that's where getting to an MBA and then launching a business, on the New York Stock Exchange, in 2014, you think you couldn't get there after being at the NBA, but those levels, they can keep going if you really pursue and push and put the right people and have a lot of, dedication to it. So I'm extremely a believer in, the confidence piece is a big part of how I've been able to do it. I have quiet confidence. I'm not a loud person, but I'm very sure and steady. And I think that's the part that does me well in time. And over the years, I've found that's great. That's been a good attribute for me.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've been able to be true to yourself throughout all of these kind of career changes and job changes, which is something that I think is important for our students to know, that they can be authentically themselves and still kind of be on that path to get where they need to be. And I love that you have learned from every experience, even if it was a learning experience, like this is not the right field for me. And so kind of thinking back to when you first started out in your career, what's one thing you wish you had known when you were just getting started?
That it takes time. I think when you get somewhere, you start out, you got that Superman on your chest. You just want to just knock people out the way. You want to get to the top. And I think the process of progress needs to be taken at a step at a time to get to your desired level of greatness. That's something that I really say to myself. Process takes time. To get to the best of the best, you're going to have to put in the time, Kevin. And, I wasn't afraid to move from, Tallahassee, then to Orlando, then to East Lansing, Michigan, then to New York. And then the NBA moved me twice. Hey, we want you to move to South Carolina because we think there's opportunity for you to grow. Then, hey, we want to move you back to New York. And, I just really felt like, when I think back, it doesn't seem like it took a lot of time, but that's years. Like that's 20 years I just ran down to you all, besides Pro to CO. Like literally, I had done all of that before I had even launched my own. I didn't mind saying that this is a journey, and I think it's the tortoise strategy, not the hare. By the inch. by this process, by having applied myself over and over. I got the opportunity. So I think today we're so used to running and moving fast, and you want those things to happen. And for some people, they do get the nod quicker than others. But I think for most of us, knowing that it's okay to put in the work, and I'm living testimony of just knowing that if you put in the work over time, I believe good things can happen.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is so true for the time, the waiting. It's hard. It's not an easy process. And I think in the sports industry, we forget that. For students who don't have a ton of experience, they don't really see or know that. They kind of just see where people are now and desire to be there. But for people like you who have been in those roles that they highly desire, to say like, hey, just, are you willing to move? Are you willing to put the hard work in? Are you willing to start at like the coordinator roles and the roles that aren't paying a ton? Because yeah, I think that's where we see students kind of wonder and wobble of like, is this going to be worth it for me? Are those positions achievable if I can't get the first job? Yeah, it's taking so long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's super, super helpful. And then what are some of the best resources that have helped you along the way? Whether that's people, we can talk about people, we'll get to that in a second as well, but it could be, organizations, associations you're affiliated with.
Sure. My first professional organization was the N4A, which is National Association of Academic Advisors for Athletics. Man, it was so amazing to be in a network of people who, saw me as a newbie, and they put their arms around me and say, "Hey, you're in a new members group. You're my mentee. Come on." And I wasn't ashamed. I put myself in a position where I believe, when you're starting out, you should find a mentee or a mentor relationship, but also learn some things. So I wasn't afraid to go and get training and attend different professional developments. At the time, there was this certification that needed to be done, and nobody else wanted. I said, "I'll do it." And I got on a plane to Utah. I spent 8 days in the middle of nowhere. And then when I got back, I was the only person in the entire athletic department when this opportunity came for someone to lead it. I'm literally the youngest person at the time. And I got a chance to elevate my profile. And then there was another time, will you represent the organization on this committee? Nobody wanted to do it. I was like, "I'll do it." And there I am flying to Chicago, as a new guy, flying to, Dallas, and getting out of the same old sometimes just opens you up, and it just allowed me to get better. And then I think just picking it up and not being afraid to invest. At one point, I invested in coaching. I believed that the best athletes had coaches, the best singers had coaches, the best, people who want to be CEOs had coaches. And I'm like this little guy, but I didn't feel as successful as I wanted to be. So I paid for a guy I never met. He coached me over the phone. And I literally wrote that check and didn't, it hurt every time. Cause I was like, man, I'm barely paying bills, but I felt that I wasn't getting where I was going by myself, and I needed some help. And I think the ability to ask for help as you're trying to evolve is a skill. I think people hide sometimes behind not wanting to get the help, and I didn't hide behind that. I went and got it, and it accelerated my career. I became a vice president at the NBA very early in my 30s, and I really appreciate the fact that they gave me that chance. But I was not sitting around. I was innovating. I was throwing ideas out. I was the creative person that, like, look, go ahead and try it. I worked in the development league. Nobody wanted to work in that. I was doing things that I think people didn't want to necessarily, wasn't as glamorous as the NBA or the WNBA. It was the minor league, going to Asheville, Greenville, Fayetteville, and Huntsville, like these villes. Like, man, nobody wants to get on 3 planes to get to one city. But like I was not daunted by the lack of not having the spotlight. I believed that I would eventually be where I needed to be. So just a risk taker is the other skill. I think people calculated risk, though, not just jumping out of a plane and no parachute. Calculate whether this is going to work for you. So those are things that I say I thought from, that were good skills and good things that I was able to do, that not so people related, but they were just, process and how I thought and application.
Awesome. And were there people that come to mind when you think of the most influential people in your career trajectory, I would say?
Absolutely. Every step of the way. The gentleman who hired me was a longtime mentor before he passed away, Dr. Roger Gruders. He took a chance on me. He said, "You have it, I believe, and it's my job to get it out of you." I said, "What is it?" Just to be sure. He says, "Inner talent. It's there. I just have to bring it out. And together, if you listen, you won't be good at this work. You're going to be one of the great ones." And matter of fact, I don't think you're gonna be in college long. He said, "I think you got a whole nother level that I can't call it, but I think you'll be doing something else." And he was right. I literally got the call from the NBA saying, "Hey, we want you to join the first minor league we've ever created. Want you to be one of the new executives to help us figure it out." And again, I got there and there was this guy named Dennis Robinson. Dennis, he just took me under his wing. I was from the South. Like I literally had people say, "You're not smart because you go to school in a football school. You go to a Southern type of education." And I was like, like in my mind, like, they're educationally discriminating because they're just saying you're not smart because of where you're from regionally. And I didn't believe that. I said, David Stern doesn't think so. The commissioner of the NBA doesn't think so. So I understand you went to Cornell or Harvard or Yale, but I'm here to do a job and I believe we're going to be successful. And I'm here to know that everywhere I've been successful. I plan on doing the same. So that was literally my first day and I realized I needed to maybe work on some things. Maybe I am coming across a little certain way. I took it one way, but I applied it another way. Like, okay, he might be telling me something. I think sometimes when people tell you something, you don't always take the negative. You say, what can I learn from that? I said, okay, so let me get with some people who can help me get the New York kind of swag going so I can really fit in here. But I never lost my calm nature, my ability to be creative. Those were my assets. When everybody else was rapid fire trying to talk over each other, I always sit back and they say, Kevin, what do you say? And I would always have a great word for them. So I think for me, I was able to see through people. And then my last that allowed me to transition was really, two people. My wife always was somebody I would go to and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And it was like our decision. I can't make all these moves by myself. And I know the last part in a couple of years at the NBA, she's like, do you believe you can really make this thing work? And I think you always need that encouragement by, your spouse or your partner when you're making these high level moves. Because what people won't tell you is that when you get to executive level, it's extremely hard to maintain that pace for a lot of years. I mean, I went from Australia to Asia to Alaska, Latin America, lots of different places, and you gotta have a person who's keeping you motivated and keeping you charged that isn't at work sometimes. So that was really needed. And then the last part is, when I made the leap to entrepreneurship, I befriended a CEO and I was just totally blown away. And I think we all know people who are connected to people, but we don't tap into it. So here's what I did. I said, hey man, I want to leave. Do you know somebody who is a CEO of the stock exchange? My friend was like, man, you're asking some crazy questions. I was like, well, I want to figure out how to connect with them. So I ended up asking him. He said, I know a friend who knows the guy. The guy invited me to the Mets game, and I'll never forget it. I met the CEO, and I had researched him and found out what he liked. He was actually a basketball player and played in a rec league. So I connected. I'm from the NBA. He loves to play basketball. We had an amazing conversation. He asked me to his office. The next morning, I showed up at 5:30 in the morning. 5:30 in the morning. You hear me? 5:30 in the morning in his office. He said, I'll give you 15, 20 minutes. I stayed an hour and a half because we talked. He said, I got to leave because I got to start the New York Exchange market and open up for the world. But, come back. We'll be mentoring. And he just mentored me into building an exit strategy. And hence, that's how I really began to get a really good footing. He believed in me, even when I didn't believe as much in myself, because he saw something and he told me what I could possibly do. And to this day, we're good friends, and he continues to sow into me. And I think we all need to know that you can't really do this by yourself. Um, in my opinion, I mean, you can these days you can be an influencer and have the spotlight, and you can have a great following. But behind those people, if they're really great, they still have great people helping put them in positions to see the blind spots, the things that you can't see, the things that you need help on. I have a great team behind me. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Protoseo isn't Kevin Carr. Protoseo is our team. If you go to protoseo.com, you'll see my founders, co-founders, you'll see the team. Just to let you know that it doesn't happen, greatness is just all by yourself. It's years of time and effort and energy and great people around me. And I don't have a lot of people around me because I also know that everybody isn't built for this ride. So at times I've had to make some tough decisions and I let people go as a CEO, or I had to stop with a very lucrative contract because it wasn't very good for our business long term. And sometimes you're going to turn down tens of thousands of dollars because at the end of the day, it might run your business in the ground and then you'll be out of business. So you have to make really strong ethical decisions around what your principles are as a leader. And so a lot of people along the way helped me do that. Forgive me of any other great mentors that I don't mention because there've been a lot along the way. And I'm a mentor now. I mentor multiple people around the country. And I do it because someone did it for me when I was young. And hear this out, students, that when you're young, sometimes you're super hungry. And I was really hungry. I didn't have as much of a mentor first coming out until Dr. DeGruters tapped my shoulder. And then I realized that I needed mentorship, but I really needed to find that, and that helped get my career started. So that's something that, I think we all need to be okay asking for help and be a good mentee by following up and following through. And don't be mad if your mentor doesn't call you back sometimes, like I do, because I'm busy, but we mean well and we're going to get back to you. And you just keep calling and you keep consistency and you keep the level of professionalism. And one day you're going to reverse mentor them. You're going to have some stuff that they don't know how to do, and that's how you pay them back. So don't be so worried, like, what can I do to help you? Be ready to receive, and then when it's your time, you'll know it's ready and you can help, and be helpful and be willing to do that as well.
That's such a great message. And we're always trying to encourage our students to network. I continue to network. It's something I try to practice. And so I know it's so, so important. Just shifting gears a little bit.
Sure.
Even through COVID, we've just seen so many different changes over these last few years. So how have you seen your industry grow and change over the past 5 years? And then where do you think it's going?
I think it's changed a lot from a content standpoint. I think you have to, you could sit on the side and not really produce much and you wouldn't impact your business. Now you have to have a content strategy and people have to know you're out here doing stuff. And if you're sitting back saying, oh, I don't like social media, I don't like you're thinking all wrong. So you literally have to, as a business or as an institution even, you have creating podcasts like this. This is in the content space. We weren't doing this a lot 3 years ago, right? So is this podcast 3 years old, 4 years old? How old is
it? I think we're on season 4. So yeah.
Okay.
It was like 2019.
But you understand what I mean. The content play is huge. And I think people need to continue to understand that it's not going anywhere. We need to be part of that. I think in terms of what I see, our business acumen has really had to pick up. There's just so many opportunities between brands and doing business, at every level now. The amateur industry has picked up. The collegiate industry has totally picked up with NIL. And then I think athletes being brands and connecting the dots with deal making and, using their likenesses, all those have really increased. I felt years ago that entrepreneurship and brands with athletes would be important. So I think the athletes themselves understanding that they have to have a brand and own a brand and create a brand, I think that's been really good. So to me, I feel like, what I'm seeing is really truly more industry coming into academia as well. I like that. I think there should be more practical experience along with the theoretical. It should be a little more balance to that. So I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to kind of bring what I've learned and continue to do that in the future. So I think there's a lot here and a lot ahead of us. So it's just, but who knows? I think things are going to be more international as well. I
Mhm.
see things that are happening. You're seeing the NFL expand more games, Major League Baseball. I see leagues in other countries, particularly becoming very popular. I think you're going to see, particularly continent Africa, where you see NBA basketball league. I think there'll be some huge gains there because there's just a lot of talent. When you look at some of the emerging athletes who are coming from different parts of the world. Soccer is, or what they call football, we call soccer. I think that's going to push. And basketball, most recently, you saw, European teams win over the U.S. And that's not been, very, very common. It's happened, but we're seeing other um, international countries do well, and they're going to continue to do well. So there's business and evolving in that direction too.
That makes a lot of sense. So we do wonder, I mean, our students are starting out and it can be difficult, especially, I mean, you mentioned this already a little bit before about that failure piece. And so can you just tell us about experiencing a career setback and then how you navigated it? How did you keep moving forward?
Sure. When I made the leap from athletics to business, I failed miserably at it. So much so that it started impacting my health. I actually lost a lot of weight, and I'm not a big guy. I'm a tall, lean dude. So imagine becoming like a toothpick because of the stress, and I don't want anybody to do that. So when things aren't going well at work, you have to kind of decide. And at that point, I decided I didn't want to continue that work. So I respectfully actually resigned. So I resigned without a job and went into work and didn't have work for months. And what I would say is, for me, I thought I could do the business of sales, and I wasn't a very good salesperson at all. I just didn't like the follow up and the constant where you had to make 50 to 100 calls. It wasn't my lane, it wasn't my thing. And though I think if I'd have stayed with it a little bit longer, I would have become better. But I realized, for me, that it was probably, I was getting as many calls to come back into sports, and I had stayed with that network, but there just weren't any jobs, for a period of time. So for me, I learned a valuable lesson, like, you know, really understand, if your skill you believe has, room to grow and you still want to fight it out, do that. But also if you really have found out this isn't for you, continue to have resources and networks to allow you to get back in it. Because I had a lot of people say, once you leave, you're never gonna get back in, Kevin. You're never gonna get back in. I was like, really? Why? Why wouldn't I? I'm still gonna stay connected. And literally, probably after 4 months, I had 4 job offers in month 5. And now I had a real problem. Do I decide to go here, 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 here? And I literally took the toughest one, which was to go to East Lansing, and from there had a major career and won a championship through basketball as an administrator there. It was my second, actually my third one. I've been real fortunate to have experienced championships in hockey, football, and basketball at 2 different schools. So it's been a real unique thing. So I learned from that you can have a setback, but don't let it set you back where you don't feel like you can get back if you try and keep connected and let people know you're doing. And even to this day, I stay involved with the National Association of Academic Advisors for Athletics. Like this is 20 plus years, because those people now, they're all decision makers. They're ADs now. They work at sports agencies now, and I'm still connected and learned that, that's a huge advantage for me. So now in this industry of, where NIL is happening, I can go to a lot of people who are in leadership positions and actually position our business quite well to do and compete in this, because we have relationships at the right places with the right people, and we've kept those really pure and authentic by staying in touch with people over the years. Not just, hey, we're a new company, we're out here competing. Like people are like, oh, that's Kev. We know what he's been able to do over his years. Like, okay, let's figure something out. Then let's go to the table and see what you guys can do. And that's been a good fortune for us.
Awesome. And when it comes to, people or students, I should say, getting into this field of player development, or even maybe thinking about starting their own business, or I think, side businesses are very common now too. In some of this work, especially with NIL and branding, what are some thoughts you have, or what should they consider when going into these fields?
Well, consider, consider your experience. Like, what are you offering? What do you bring? And I think you got to be able to be real clear on that. Like I told you earlier, these are the lanes we do work in. So people want to know, what you're talking about. Also have a niche. Like, okay, you're going to be competing with you or me or Dr. Jess here. What do you do that's a little bit different and, can really rise above all the others? When they hang up the phone with you, they're picking up another call that afternoon with someone else who's just as talented, has many people, and they know people personally. So you got to figure out that. And then I think the other thing is, do you believe you really have the capacity? Because a lot of times it's time. Do you have the time, and you're really willing to dedicate it and be okay not being able to do certain things over other things to be able to create? For me, for a long time, I carried two computers trying to figure it out, like mine and theirs. And my dream was to be doing a few things, but not losing focus on the task at hand, my job. I was really committed to not commingling and just doing things like that. And I think for some, when people were sleeping on the train or planes, that was my time to do 30 minutes here, grab to write or create or figure out a strategy for a book or some IP that I want to develop, or a brand, or reserve a .com or something like that. You really got to think through it. And then the other part was just you got to have resources. Businesses don't run on hope. They don't run on just somebody give me an opportunity. You have to have resources. So for me, I was smart enough to save a little bit. I would say it probably cost 3 times as much as I thought. So it was very difficult at times to say, gotta have my website, gotta have all these things paid for. And do I go on this business trip to find an opportunity? Do I have enough bandwidth at the start to make all these runs to try to develop the business? So you gotta have capacity in terms of resources too. And those are things that I think students or people want to be emerging in this field as from a for-profit standpoint. On your own, you have to consider, I think, teaming with people is good, depending on if you have like-mindedness and your synergy is there. And that can save you time, and that can save you resources too if you find the right partner. So those are things that I kind of think about and share. So there's no one formula. I think you'll hear from some of the best people in the world. They'll say, Kevin Carr, what are you talking about? But for me, that works, and it's worked for me. And so I think there's maybe a different way somebody else will see it, but those are some of the things I think about. Having done this and been around it a long time, I've just been able to really establish a way that works for me and also works for my personal life. I have a family. I do want to be available. I have a student athlete in college now, and I would say my best work is her, literally, because it was about being a student and then being an athlete. And if the athletic part works out, will you get a college opportunity? Great. But if it doesn't, then we have options. And I think that's the biggest thing, options, and coaching people to create as much clarity in themselves to figure out if I go this way or go that way, there's an opportunity, and not just putting it all on one. Because the greatest of the greatest of the greatest athletes all have to transition and do something else. So already having those comfortabilities with the what else you could possibly doing is a good way to kind of go, and that's why I like the work I get to do, because I figured that was an opportunity for us, and it's been working for us for a lot of years so far, and hopefully a lot more.
Awesome. And so it sounds like you're incredibly busy, even in the downtimes, quote unquote, on the trains, planes, and automobiles. It does take so much effort and time and resources to get to where you are now. So how do you stay healthy in this high-paced, high-demand job? Or what are some ways,
Well,
I should say?
I think there's two ways. There's a physical workout and there's a mental workout. And, are you treating and taking care of yourself as good as your wardrobe, as good as your car? And I think that's part of it, right? So that's a quick assessment. So when I thought about it when I was corporate, I wasn't doing that as good. I wasn't able to make the recitals or the teacher progress reports. I wanted to figure out how to get better at that. So that was part of the reason of the exit strategy from corporate, because I had reached a respectable level. Obviously, I wanted to be even higher, but at some point, I wanted to get that balance. So for me, it's a daily routine. I'm an early riser. I get up in the can't see hours, and I do the routine, and I don't necessarily grab my phone right away. I am a person who prays and meditates and affirmations and things like that to get alignment for myself. I review quotes and goals for myself to see where I want to go. So those are real, and this is very real. I don't play around. A lot of people say, "Oh, I get up early and I do this. I run 10 miles." No, that's part of it, but I haven't gotten to that part. So I do a mental check in and make sure I'm working on the mental to get me lined up. And it's, things like, if I can get a walk or get a workout. I got a treadmill here at the house and things of that nature. And I'm drinking plenty of water. I have a lot of things that make sure that I'm got things intact so I can get myself going. I do take my kids to school, and I love that time because it's like, okay, what's our goals for the day? What's happening with you the rest of the week? I like that. I love that. I don't give that up. I get back, get myself ready. I'm a smoothie person in the morning or a cup of coffee. I don't really do a heavy breakfast. And then I get to work. I attack my get it done list, and I try to do what I call the top producing activities of the day. Green producing activities, the things that are going to create green space, green money, green opportunities. I know that sounds a little corporate, but I'm trying to be a producer and trying to solve problems so we can grow as an organization, grow my people who work with us, and really, solve some of the things that people have hired us to do. And I've literally look at what I got the next day, and and begin it all over again. But I do take time to go to cross country meets, go to leadership things for my kids. So those are things that I kind of like to do to be balanced, and making sure that I'm not just all work, 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 right?
I love that. Love that. Okay, so for our viewers who would like to get in touch with you,
Yep.
how do you recommend people connect with you? What do you prefer?
Well, I'm really a couple things. LinkedIn is big for us. I'm able to really touch a lot of lanes professionally because that's where the professionals hang out, right? And if you want to be a pro, you really got to be amongst them. So you'll see content from us. I'm not always the best content producer, but we produce content because I believe that's where people are getting information. So contact me there. The other thing is the direct message. Instagram is very helpful, being able to reach us there, or our website, protoceo.com, and we have a contact us, and you can contact me, and we get the information there. I mean, those are really things that, are easy for us, but LinkedIn, direct message, IG, or direct at the website. And I have someone, if I miss it, somebody covers me and reminds me, hey, you got to get back to so and so. So I have a little catch-all system there too.
Perfect. You'll be seeing my LinkedIn invite later. So
absolutely. I welcome that. And seriously, I try to get back to people. I mean, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not that I don't want to. It's chances are I've got a couple people ahead of you, but we'll get there for sure.
No problem. And I think our viewers understand. We are really fortunate to bring on some heavy hitters, and so we understand that you all are busy and that you want to help. So that works. On our show, we like to have a little fun before we wrap up, and so we have some rapid fire Q&A questions for you, and Shelly is going to walk you through it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
awesome.
So fire away questions, 1 minute worth of questions, see how many you can get through. If there's a question that comes your way that you don't answer, you can pass, and we'll just take it from there.
All right. Let me get set.
All right. Kevin's got to get his hydration in real quick.
Get my hydration back on.
Do a little stretch. Yeah, a little stretch it out. Okay. All right. I'm going to set my timer. And here we go. When you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted actually to be an FBI agent.
Okay. Favorite sport to play?
Basketball. Come on now.
What's the worst haircut you've ever had?
Ooh, my own. I put my lines way back here. It's terrible. My kids tease me to this day.
Favorite holiday?
Gotta be Christmas. The time you get with your family, priceless, because it extends to New Year's. Like, I love that period of time.
Name 2 daily habits.
Water with oil in it, and going through my notes to find the best things that I forget about doing and remind me of affirmations, things of that nature. Those are my habits. Great words. Okay. I take them from different things. 3,000 notes here, just of the best stuff.
Okay. And first job, last question.
Ooh, my first job. You really want to know? My first job, I was an elementary school janitor at the very elementary I went to at 16 years old. So I have much respect for the guy who cleaned up after us, after doing that job.
Yeah. And that's why we do fire away, because you get stories like that you're like, who's going to know that? Nobody knows that. That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And I do have to ask one question about the oil. What kind of oil do you have in your water?
Ooh, it's called Young Living. Let me see if I got it here.
Yeah, what the little essential oil?
With a little essential oil, and it is here, and you put 1 drop and it just liquefies that water and takes it to the next level. And then I got my Lark bottle, and literally I take these wherever I go. So people say water is boring, so you drop a little this, and it infused. I have grapefruit flavor. So
cool.
Literally I am getting my water in. So guys, ladies, you don't like water, just drop you a drop in there, and it literally gives you a little bit of flavor, and it makes me, and I have a reminder to drink water. So literally I'm knocking the, goals down even in the water consumption. But I like that. Thanks. A good question though. I that's a little different. I usually have never shared that. So that is a first, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow. Thank you. We feel privileged.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad you asked, because I wondered too. I immediately thought, what kind of oil? I wonder what it is. So I love that you asked.
Yeah, my wife is an organic farmer, so I
Oh,
get
cool. That's
all my
awesome.
ideals with health and wellness, not my own, from her. So that is a benefit of being connected to someone who lives on the healthy side, truly.
Yeah, have that
Yeah, very
insight
cool.
and that knowledge. I didn't know you could put oil in water like that. So that's so cool. Thank you, Kevin, so much for joining us today and for just sharing your insights and your professional journey. I know that it wasn't necessarily a linear journey, but I think that's the beauty of it. And our students need to know that it doesn't take one way to get to your goals. If you're passionate, if you follow your passions and you're hardworking and you have that support, you can meet those dreams that you have. And so we really, really appreciate all that you shared today. And I'm certain that the University of Florida Department of Sport Management, our students, our faculty, and our alumni appreciate and value your thoughts. And so we always tell our listeners, follow us on Twitter or X, Instagram, and Facebook. We're at UFSPM. Yeah, at UFSPM. And we are your host. I'm Jessica Francis.
And I'm Shelly Lyle, and go
Go
Gators.
Gators.
Gators, go